It's worth pointing out again that a lot of the problems that we currently see in our society in Scotland, as well as further afield, the UK and whatnot, can't be traced back to the Sustainable Development Goals if you know what to look for. Goal 10, reduced inequalities, Dinlip's favourite one of course. It says, target 10.2, by 2030 empower and promote the social, economic, but specifically politically, inclusion of all, irrespective of age, sex, disability, race, ethnicity, origin, religion, or economic or other status. Something that only seems to apply to the Western world. All the other countries, they don't need to get involved in this, of course not. But the fact of the matter is, it's no coincidence that all across the Western world, triggered by something that appears to be premeditated, and that is the rise of Antifa and the BLM post George Floyd, there is demands for representation, and there's demands for inclusion, etc. And it says right here, promote the social, economic and political inclusion of all by 2030. Now the pressure has been piled on to fulfill this goal. Bear in mind as well, as I've stated, in the Decade of Action, which was announced at the beginning of the year, which was the need to accelerate the transformation of our society in order to meet the 2030 targets. So with that in mind, that brings us to, yet again, more crap that could be seen as nothing other than cancerous identity politics or something sustainable development related. I'll let you be the judge on that front. However, we have here from the Daily Record that the Rainbow Unicorn Party are seeking legal advice on boosting number of BAME MSPs in Hollywood. So for the second day in a row, we are having more crap shoved down our throats in relation to the lack of representation, and they need to rectify this wrong by any means possible, preferably what they would call positive discrimination, but there's nothing really positive about it unless you are one of the groups that the Scottish Government have so graciously classified as oppressed. It comes amid criticism that only 4 MSPs of the Scottish Parliament had been from black and ethnic minority backgrounds. And again, you keep lumping them all into the same collective. They're not the same. Black people are not the same as Muslims and every other minority ethnic group that are in this country. They're not all one. But it's pitting them against white people, native Scots, indigenous Scottish people. It says the SNP has sought legal advice on how to get more people from ethnic minorities elected into Hollywood. Of course it fucking has. It comes amid criticism that only 4 MSPs in the history of the Scottish Parliament have been from black and ethnic backgrounds. The history of the Scottish Parliament has existed for 20 years, and as I've stated on many occasions, in those 20 years, in 2001 it was 2% non-white, in 2011 it was 4% non-white. But of course it has to be for some systemic and structural inequality. That's what the SNP are famous for at this point, righting the wrongs and smashing down the non-existent barriers and the glass ceilings, etc. Stands to reason if the population in 2001 was 2% non-white, there's not going to be that many that would be qualified or in a position of political power. And the same could be said, arguably, in 2011. But the fact that we have 2 currently ethnic minorities in that parliament suggests that the parliament itself isn't racist, Scotland's not racist, and there is no bias. But no. Of course there is bias. Let's just ignore how Hamza Yusuf got into the parliament, and let's pretend that blacks are being held back and Muslims are being held back, because it justifies all the things that they wish to do, right the wrongs of the evil white man, etc. At the last conference, the Rainbow Unicorn delegates agreed a motion recognising the progress made increasing the number of women elected, and look where that's got us. Look where that has got us. And again, what screams equality about quote-unquote 50-50 representation? Yeah, it's not even 50-50 representation, is it? Because it always boils down to at least 50. But what screams equality about that? A meritocracy is died a death. Oh yeah. However, it warned that BAME, disabled, and other minority communities continue to be underrepresented at Hollywood. What is this bollocks about underrepresentation? Somebody gets into a position of power, he's supposed to do, or she's supposed to do, everything that she was elected for. She's supposed to, or he's supposed to, represent said constituency. They're not supposed to be in these positions of power because of their identity. A disabled person is not meant to be in parliament to represent disabled people. The government itself should be doing all they can for disabled people. A black person is not meant to be in that parliament to represent black people. Or Hamza Yusuf's not supposed to be in that parliament to run his fucking mouth about Muslims all day long and their hardship, or run his mouth about how white people are the oppressors in quote unquote. I don't see any white individuals in that parliament representing white people. Because you know what gets me about this? They want BAME candidates put in winnable seats for them to represent their communities, right? But then they'll claim to represent their communities and Scotland at large. Well, then the same argument could be made for white people in that parliament. White people could quite easily represent the country at large, but that's not good enough for you individuals. You think that there needs to be BAME people in there to represent BAME people. It's nothing to do with representing the country at large, because a white person could quite clearly do that. The argument falls flat on its face. It's nothing to do with representing the country at large. It's about what you consider power. Representation, my arse. Is this power? This is what you want. Because every single one of you people are the same. All you talk about is whiteness. All you talk about is getting more of your ilk in. The motion mentioned setting aside seats for groups that struggle to overcome barriers and called on the party to investigate whether selection procedures could be changed. Barriers. You ever considered that maybe disabled people don't put themselves forwards? Ever considered that there's not enough BAME candidates out there currently? I'm pretty sure there's a lot more now than there was last time around, but still, the point remains the same. Ahead of a meeting at the Rainbow Unicorns Governing National Executive Committee last week, activists submitted a proposal which would have likely increased the number of BAME MSPs. What? Why? Just for the purpose of them being BAME? Because as I said already, if the argument is for them to be in there, but to represent Scotland at large, then the same argument could be made for white people, but that's not good enough. So this is to do with identity. Very much so. They call for 4 SNP seats in which the sitting member is standing down. So here we go again. They've tried to shit every man that stood down in the last election term. Was it 2016? Might have been 2017. I can't recall. Every man that stood down had to be replaced by a woman. And now they're wanting the same for BAME. You're forcing BAME candidates into quote-unquote winnable seats. So people are forced to vote for them if they want their party to get back in. It's just ridiculous. The amendment also called for at least 1 seat agreed as an all-women shortlist to accept only nominations from disabled women. I mean, it is understood there was concern about the legality of the proposal, and legal advice has been sought to inform discussions. A party insider told the police there was a real mood at the NEC to boost the number of BAME candidates, but the source said the main concern was that the Equality Act doesn't allow for that in the same way that it doesn't for all women ballots. It's going to need an effort at local level to make progress happen. Progress, This is just great. Similarly, Scottish Labour recently agreed to review their candidate selection proposals over concerns their plans did not cater for minority groups. It comes after nearly 40 groups signed a letter calling for greater representation of Muslims at Holyrood. So we have to have Muslims represented, we have to have BAME individuals represented as a whole. Why? Because we happen to have BAME Muslim individuals in our country. Isn't that great? Isn't diversity our strength? Yes.